There was a time when Mario Balotelli wasn't just a footballer, he was the future, a prodigy crowned as Europe's golden boy, dazzling on the pitch with a mix of raw power and natural talent that made the world believe he would dominate for years to come. But behind the brilliance was chaos, from clashes with managers to endless headlines off the field, to battles with racism and pressure that no young player should carry. Balotelli's story slowly twisted from promise into heartbreak. How did the golden boy, once destined for greatness, become one of football's biggest tragedies? Mario Balotelli's story doesn't begin with the spotlight of Champions League nights or the roar of packed stadiums. It begins in Palermo, Sicily. Inside a family struggling to survive. Born to Ghanaian immigrants, Mario's first years were marked by illness and hardship. As an infant, he faced serious health problems, requiring surgeries that his biological parents simply couldn't afford. With their backs against the wall, they made a heartbreaking decision: entrust Mario to another family, hoping he'd have a chance at life they couldn't provide. That's how the Balotelli family entered his story. They gave him stability, a new name, and a fresh beginning in Brescia, a quiet city in northern Italy. But being a black child in a predominantly white environment meant Mario grew up feeling different, constantly reminded that he was seen as an outsider. This early sense of isolation, combined with his raw determination, forged a personality that was both fiery and fearless. On the pitch, though, none of that mattered. With a ball at his feet, Mario became unstoppable. Even as a teenager, his strength, pace, and confidence looked like something out of a video game. Scouts and coaches saw a player who didn't just belong, he dominated. At just 17, he was breaking through at Inter Milan, scoring goals against hardened Serie A defenders who couldn't believe this kid was barely out of school. His touch was elegant, his finishes ruthless, and his self-belief unshakable. Very quickly, the whispers turned into headlines. Italy had found its new prodigy. The kid from Brescia, who once faced the possibility of never making it past childhood, was now a rising star in one of the toughest leagues in the world. It wasn't just talent, it felt like destiny. Balotelli's rise was meteoric. At Inter Milan, he wasn't just a promising youngster, he was already competing at the highest level, scoring in the Champions League and showing a fearlessness that made fans believe he could be the next global superstar. But the real explosion came when he moved to England. In 2010, Manchester City signed him, and suddenly the football world couldn't stop talking about the fiery Italian teenager who played like he had nothing to fear.
About him, it's not a show he puts on. He's always the same.
To me, he's just, I don't know, he's kind of from another planet. He will get fired out of a cannon, won't he, when he leaves City? That's how he'll leave. Mario's leaving, he's going back to Italy, and we're going to fire him out of a cannon. He's going to be gone.
In Manchester, Mario became a headline machine. On the pitch, he delivered unforgettable moments, the powerful strikes in the Premier League, and that iconic "Why Always Me" celebration after scoring against Manchester United. Every goal seemed to prove that this kid wasn't just talented, he was box office. The hype reached its peak in 2010 when Balotelli won the Golden Boy Award, given to the best young player in Europe. Journalists and players alike agreed Mario wasn't just good, he was destined to be great. Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, those were the names people mentioned when they imagined who Balotelli might rival in the future. He had everything: speed, strength, technical brilliance, and the charisma to make fans love him or hate him, but never ignore him. In those moments, it felt like nothing could stop him. Balotelli was more than a footballer, he was a phenomenon, a golden boy carrying the weight of Italy's hopes and the attention of the entire world. But what the world didn't see was that while Mario's star was rising, cracks were already beginning to form beneath the surface, and they would soon change everything. For every dazzling goal Balotelli scored, there seemed to be an equally dramatic moment that pulled him in the opposite direction.
I remember one in Kazan. We went to Kazan in the Champions League, and in that match I had all my strikers injured. No Milito, no Eto'o. I was really in trouble, and Mario was the only one. Mario gets a yellow card in minute 42, 43. So when I go to the dressing room at halftime, I spent, I would say, 14 minutes of the 15. I was spending 14 minutes speaking only for Mario. Mario, I cannot change you. I cannot make a change. I don't have a striker on the bench. Don't touch anybody. Play only with the ball. When we lose the ball, no reaction. If somebody provocates you, no reaction. If the referee makes a mistake, no reaction. Mario, please. minute 46.
No way.
Red card.
No way.
Even at Inter Milan, Jose Mourinho admitted that Mario was one of the most talented players he had ever coached, but also one of the most complicated. Mourinho once told a story that captured it perfectly. In a Champions League match, all of Inter's strikers were injured, and Balotelli was the only option left. At halftime, Mourinho begged him not to get booked in the second half because the team needed him. 10 minutes later, Mario picked up a red card. It was moments like this that made people question if genius and self-destruction lived side by side in him. When he moved to Manchester City, the spotlight only grew harsher. His goals were spectacular, but his behavior became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Training ground fights with teammates, arguments with Roberto Mancini on the touchline, red cards for unnecessary fouls. And then there were the off-field headlines that made him a tabloid obsession, like setting off fireworks in his own bathroom, crashing his cars, or handing out money to strangers in the street. Every week there was a new Balotelli story, and while the public laughed, clubs began to wonder if the chaos was worth the risk. But what looked like recklessness on the outside often came from something deeper. Balotelli was still a young man navigating fame, pressure, and a lifetime of being treated differently. He grew up in an Italy where racist chants followed him from stadium to stadium, where he was constantly reminded he didn't look Italian enough. Instead of mentorship and protection, what he often received was criticism and ridicule. He was fighting battles that most couldn't see, and doing it all under the brightest lights in football. As a result, Mario's name became a paradox. On one side, he was the golden boy, capable of moments of pure brilliance, the kind of talent fans paid just to watch. On the other, he was the enfant terrible of football, unpredictable and volatile. His teammates never knew which version of him would show up, the unstoppable striker or the ticking time bomb. The whispers grew louder. Maybe he didn't care enough. Maybe he wasn't disciplined. Maybe he'd never fulfill his promise. And as those doubts spread through locker rooms, boardrooms, and terraces, the cracks in Balotelli's fairy tale rise began to turn into deep fractures that would soon consume his entire career. If the headlines about Balotelli's behavior were loud, the chants he heard in stadiums were even louder and far more painful. From the earliest days of his career in Italy, Mario was targeted with racist abuse. Monkey noises from the stands, chants telling him he didn't belong, even objects thrown at him when he touched the ball. For a player who had grown up in Brescia, who considered himself Italian through and through, the constant reminder that others saw him as an outsider cut deeper than any foul on the pitch. This wasn't just a few isolated incidents, it was relentless. In 2009, during a match against Juventus, their ultras directed a storm of racist chants at him. Instead of condemning it, many brushed it off as part of the game. For Mario, it was a wound that never closed. Even years later, when he played in France and Turkey, the abuse followed him. At times, he threatened to walk off the pitch mid-game, sending a message that no amount of goals could justify that kind of treatment. But racism wasn't his only battle. Balotelli also carried the scars of his childhood, being placed in foster care, growing up in a family that loved him but wasn't his blood, and navigating the complicated relationship with his biological parents, who had once let him go. That mix of abandonment and expectation left him with a sense of identity that was always fragile, always questioned. He wasn't just fighting defenders, he was fighting the weight of who the world expected him to be, and all of this was happening while he was still barely out of his teens. Most young players only have to focus on football. Mario had to focus on proving he belonged, defending himself from abuse and living up to a label, Golden Boy, that set the bar almost impossibly high. Pressure came from every side, from the media that turned him into a punchline, from managers who demanded discipline, from fans who wanted miracles. Instead of patience, he got judgment. Instead of understanding, he got ridicule. And for someone as fiery and emotional as Mario, the weight of that pressure didn't push him to greatness. It slowly started to crush him. What had once been a dream began to feel like a burden, and the cracks in his career widened even further. For every spark of brilliance, Balotelli's career seemed to take 2 steps backward. What should have been the prime of his life, those crucial years when most players cement themselves as legends, became a carousel of transfers, broken contracts, and unfulfilled promises. After Manchester City, where he left behind unforgettable memories like his assist for Sergio Aguero's title-winning goal, Balotelli returned to AC Milan, supposedly to rebuild his career. At first, it looked like a homecoming fairy tale. He scored goals, won matches, and for a brief moment, fans believed he was back. But consistency was never his ally. His form dipped, his focus wavered, and before long, questions about his professionalism resurfaced. Liverpool came next, a chance to prove himself on one of the biggest stages in the Premier League. Instead, it turned into one of the club's most disappointing transfers. Balotelli struggled to adapt, scoring only a handful of goals and finding himself isolated both on and off the pitch. Critics labeled him lazy, uninterested, even toxic. Another door closed. From there, the decline only accelerated. He bounced between Nice and Marseille in France, had brief spells in Turkey, and even returned again to smaller Italian clubs like Brescia and Monza. Each move came with the same hope that this would finally be the place where Mario settled, matured, and unleashed the potential everyone once saw in him. But each time, the story ended the same, flashes of brilliance, followed by frustration and disappointment. By his late 20s, Balotelli had gone from being Europe's brightest young star to a footballing nomad, drifting from club to club. Coaches grew tired of defending him, teammates lost faith, and fans who once chanted his name now muttered about wasted talent. It wasn't just the missed goals or the broken contracts, it was the sense of what could have been, because everyone knew Mario Balotelli had the ability to stand alongside football's greats. Instead, his career became a cautionary tale, a reminder that talent alone is never enough. By 2024, Balotelli was at Genoa, but instead of leading the line, he was stuck on the bench. He claimed he was fit and ready, yet match after match passed without minutes. For someone once crowned Europe's golden boy, it was a painful image, watching, waiting, forgotten. Frustrated, Mario turned to social media, hinting that the rebellious kid inside him might return. Rumors linked him to clubs in Turkey, even Australia, but the truth was clear. The world no longer feared his talent. What remained was a man still fighting for relevance, still refusing to accept that his story was over. It was both defiant and heartbreaking, because no matter what he does now, Balotelli is no longer remembered for what he achieved, but for what he could have been. Mario Balotelli's career will always feel like a paradox. He had the talent to stand alongside the greatest, yet his story became one of frustration, controversy, and wasted potential. For a brief moment, he was football's golden boy, unstoppable, unforgettable, destined for greatness. But today, he's remembered as the tragedy of what never came to be. And maybe that's the cruelest part. The game will move on, but the question will always remain, what if Mario Balotelli had truly fulfilled his destiny?